Hey there! So we decided to make a video about top 3 the biggest magazine layout design mistakes, and we wanted to make this video as good as possible, so we decided we need somebody who has a really scientific approach into magazine design and typography. Luckily, we were able to find a guy whose name is Eugen. He's from Luxembourg. He's been in business like for 10 years, and he's so professional and he has so much to say about all these issues that can be seen in magazine designs nowadays. So we got lucky and interviewed him. So we wanted to make only one video covering all 3 mistakes, but he has so much knowledge and he told us so much valuable information, we ended up with 3 videos. So stay with us and let's talk with Eugen. Hello Eugen, it's nice to have you here. How are you? And tell us a bit about yourself.
Hello everybody, I'm Eugen Coman. I have been an editorial designer since 2007 or so. I first started working in this field in a small publishing house where I was creating layouts in Microsoft Word.
Okay.
Soon enough, I discovered that Word simply wasn't flexible enough to deal with issues like orphans, widows, so I began to look for workarounds. It was during this time that I bumped into lynda.com and some very passionate trainers that caused me to fall in love with InDesign and the typography as the art that serves to ease out the reader's experience with the content.
Yeah, okay.
I learned and worked with InDesign daily until 2014, when I decided to take Adobe certification exam in order to become an Adobe certified expert in InDesign.
Wow, congrats.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, what happened next?
Since then, I've been working with local magazine. My job generally was to redesign these magazines from scratch, reworking what the ex-designers creating, including better typography, and to make them more readable for their readers.
Oh, okay. I can totally relate with you saying that you were fixing messes from other designers. And I've seen so many bad designs, you know, that designers make even in 2018, you know, in all the niche magazines and general magazines. And there are so many resources of information, and it seems that they still can't create like a really good designs. So why do you think that happens, Eugen?
Well, I think that those designers are missing the big pictures when it comes to layout design. To make a good publication, you need to take in consideration right before to start adding content to the page, many aspects, like how many columns the page will have, what aspect ratio is the page, and what typeface will offer you the most legibility to be readable enough that the reader will see the shapes of the letter at the smallest point size, like 9 points or 10.
Okay, I got it. Okay, so do you think there are some kind of universal core principles that can like fit all the print magazines? And what are the like top 3 mistakes that all the designers makes? Do you see some kind of like repeating mistakes all over the magazines today?
Yeah, I see quite a lot of flows lately, starting from using a typeface that was not designed for body copy. It was more a display typeface that was designed to be seen, not to be read. And for example, other designers, they don't quite get how to use the white space at its full force.
Oh, okay, white space. That I think that's the biggest one, because so many people don't know how to use the white space. In my experience, designers don't really know how to use it, and if they don't know how to use it, clients don't appreciate that. They think that white space is some kind of like unfinished and professional layout that was just left alone, you know. So yeah, how to make the designs look professional using white space and not like unfinished and unfurnished.
Well, if we could draw a parallel between interior design and layout design, white space is very similar with the empty space that an interior design will use to make our homes look ample and spacious.
Oh, that's very good comparison. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it is more likely to manage to do a good design if you add more white space than more content. I believe that white space is a real challenge for beginner designers. They feel almost compelled to fill any empty space on the page with extra content.
So talking about the white space, are there like kind of different types of white space? Can you like tell us?
White space can be divided into macro and micro white spacing.
Okay, cool.
So basically, micro white spacing means leading, word spacing, letter spacing, gutter, and text indents. So if we go to the second spread, I can show you all this.
Wow, that's very informative. Thank you.
Okay, so leading is the space between lines.
Okay.
As you can see here, word spacing, it's the space between words. And
this time. Okay, thank you.
letter spacing is the word between the letters.
Nice.
And then we have gutters. So gutters, the space between columns, and text indents, as you can see here with this small red rectangle.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's very informative.
Yeah, and as macro white space, page margins, space between paragraphs, different paragraphs.
Different, okay.
And white columns or even rows, because usually vertically a page is divided in rows. And then the text wraps, basically the distance between the image and the text.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was very informative. So let's say somebody has a lot of problems with white space, okay? So they just didn't know anything about it and they have a like really busy and crowded magazine layout. So are there like some kind of numbers to follow on all these elements that you kind of just showed us? That was very visual, thank you very much. And so can we like give people some kind of cheat sheet that they can use and like fix every magazine they make from now on?
Unfortunately, in typography, there is no one size fits all. Basically, for example, leading it is adjusted very much to the typeface that you are using. I would be more than happy if it will be some basic numbers that I can use, I can learn by heart and use them then, and to be sure that the results I'll get, it will be perfect, but it's not the case.
Okay.
I know that people around hear they often hear some values like 10 on 12, which basically means that the body copy is 10 points and the leading it's 12. But,
yes.
But often these are based on the auto leading, which by default is set to 120% of the type size. It can work well in some cases, but for sure it's not the way the professional designers will go.
Okay. Do you have some examples, by the way?
No, I wasn't prepared some examples about that, but I can show you where this function lives.
Yeah.
If we draw just one text column and then we go here to justification, and you can see that auto leading is by default at 120%. And then auto-linking is as well the value in parentheses.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Basically, what is leading? Leading is the space between lines, as you can see here. Here's the total amount of leading, which is 12 points, regularly when the body copy is 10. But having this value of 10 points will assure us a small extra 2 points of space to be sure that the descender and ascenders will not collide, as we can see here in this case.
Yeah.
You see that there is plenty of space between them. So then it's the case that you can set your leading to be tight or loose. Both of them, they can work best. Too tight means that the type density will be increased and the page will convey more authority, and tight will make the page to feel more relaxed. But you can never go too tight or too loose, because going too tight, you'll break the text readability and you'll make the ascenders and descenders to collide. And too loose, you'll make the paragraph, the lines, to look like they're not unrelated. So you'll break the visual connection between one line and the other line.
You can touch them, yeah.
Yeah. Too tight and too loose, you'll break the readability. And with extreme sizes, values, you'll never be able to achieve a good readability. So I think that typography is the art where the operative word is medium.
Understand. Okay, sorry, I just have to ask it here, okay? So let's say we are going with some kind of very standard font, okay? Let's say Arial, okay?
Yeah.
So can we like have some kind of exact numbers to use with Arial, or maybe just these standard values of 10 and 12 would work for that?
I don't know, let's give it a shot.
Let's try, yeah, that's very interesting. Live experiment.
Arial.
I think that's the most
regular
common one, right?
Yeah, basically Arial, it's a sans serif typeface.
Yeah.
And as you can see right now, let's say 10 points on 12. I think it will be better if we compare with another typeface, and we'll see the difference between the two.
That's
so let's say Minion Pro.
Is that like a favorite font, or maybe that's a...
It's one of the best typeface for body copy.
Nice, nice. That's a very useful tip from professional. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, okay, let's imagine these two here. And you can see that Arial will look more heavier. It will be more heavier, and even taller.
Yeah.
And you can see without going into detail that the leading seems to be smaller than in this Minion case.
Yeah, and it's harder to read.
Yeah, exactly. And Minion, it's more economically, so you can have more words per line.
Got it. So if I just creating my first magazine, if I go with Minion and 1012, I would be safe, right?
Yeah,
cool.
You can say pretty much, but at the end, it will always be the question of space, because if you go print to print, you'll have an amount of pages that you can use.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you very much. Okay, so what are the actual impacts of the grid layout over the body copy.
Over the body copy.
Yeah.
So leading should be synchronized with the baseline grid of the page. Mm-hmm. So for example, if you as a designer, you'll decide to use these sizes 10 on 12, the baseline grid should have the same increment, so 12 points, okay, for the leading. Mm-hmm. And pretty much this is, you have to synchronize the body copy with the increment of the baseline grid. So you have to align the type on these baselines. And it will act like the metronome of the publication. It will be the read of the publication. In typography, as I mentioned before, everything relates to something else. So for example, leading relates to gutter space. And gutter space is the distance between two columns of text. Like you can see here. So gutters, this is gutter. And if you choose the 10 on 12 points, the gutter edge, it will be also 12 points. Having a too tight gutter space, the readers will likely read across the columns. Mm-hmm. And if it's too loose, the reader will not be able to make the connection between the two. So they will feel that the two columns of text, they are part of different stories.
Perfect. And just curious, I saw that you were using lines as column separators.
Yeah.
Are these more like design elements, or these also helps?
Here in this case is breaking up a bit the content, make the content to feel even more separated. And it's more design.
I understand. Okay, thank you. Wow, so it seems like this can mess up the content really badly. So if you use really bad spacing, you can disconnect your parts of your article and mess it up. So keep going. That's gold. That's valuable information. Let's keep going.
So I think another important concept related to typography, which is also typography, is space between letters and words.
Really?
So,
wow.
Yeah, space between these two, it shouldn't vary too much. So pretty much it should be uniform. It should have the same length. So these spaces should be consistent, or rather say the spaces should vary so little that the readers will not observe any difference between them. This also helps to increase the readability of the text, especially when the text is fully justified. In InDesign, all these adjustments are made in the justification dialog box, and letter spacing doesn't take in consideration the shape of the letter forms.
So what is considered like a good letter spacing? Should you adjust it? For example, we took the Minion font as a default, okay? Should we go into InDesign justification dialog box and change the letter justification spacing, sorry?
Pretty much in all the cases, you have to change this value in justification.
Wow.
The dialog box, especially word spacing and letter spacing, because on one line you want to have a certain number of characters just to get a good justification, and the space to be as much even as you can. So I never met a case where I didn't have to modify those values. I think it's very important to know that in this dialog box in justification, in justification dialog box, as you can see, we already have some values, inserted there, but we can be more flexible, so we can increase or decrease all these values until we get a good space between letters and words. But then here in letter spacing we are working in %, so we can work with 2 points negative, and then as maximum we can choose 2 points as well. It should be a positive. It should be a positive value. There.
So from -2 to +2%, right?
Yeah, it is +2. Basically, this is how you work. You have the first value to be negative, and then the second one positive. It's more like having.
So are these, like you used, -2 and +2, like some kind of usable value that we can like steal from you and keep using?
InDesign offers you a very powerful tool here in preference composition, H&J violation. And for example, it will show you where the space is bad. So as you can see here, we have different shades of yellow. Where the yellow is more vivid, it means that the space between words is not so even. So there we have to do something to improve it, that space. So if we go here in justification, then we can decide that the word spacing, it should be 85%, and then I don't know, maybe here 115, for example. And maybe we can want to say that the desired size should be 95%. And then we need to adjust these settings. And
getting
here,
better, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then we have to take in consideration the hyphenation as well. So the hyphenation rules. What I'm usually doing is, let's say, words with at least 7 characters, and then after the first 4 characters, and here 3, 1 hyphenation limit. This will ensure that we don't have 2 hyphens in a row. And from here, we can start working around. And on one line, to get a better spacing, we can have somewhere between 35 and 45 characters per row, per line. And when I say characters, I mean the white space between. So for example, like here, we have 31. I don't think we'll ever get a good justification with such a small column width.
Yeah, I understand.
It will be difficult, but maybe if we extend a little bit, things will change.
Oh yeah, you were right. Yeah.
So,
okay, so we learned so many new tools here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about separating the paragraph. So what's the best way to separate them? To not detach them and to make people feel that they're reading the same text.
The best way to visually separate paragraph is to use the first line indent. Signalate the end of one paragraph and the beginning of a new one.
Yeah.
So here you can see an example. So the red rectangle is the first line indent. So
are there some kind of like numbers that we should consider, having in mind that we're using like 10-12 approach?
Yeah, the first line indent usually has the same width as the body point size. So for example, if your body copy has 10 points, the first line indent can be as well the 10 points, but pretty much different. It's depending on how wide the column is. If you feel that 10 points is not the best value to use to differentiate the paragraph, you can also use the leading value just to get a bit more space there. And yeah, for example, in our example, it was 12 points, the leading, so you can use this leading value.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think we covered so many things when it comes to microspacing, and I think we're done with this part, right?
Yeah, exactly. So pretty much these are the micro white spacing that can improve the readability of the text.
Okay, so I'm gonna conclude this part with a little cheat sheet for our viewers to download. It's going to be a link below the video. And let's continue at macro spacing. And I think macro spacing is responsible for creating the overall feeling, right?
White space will make the layout more appealing. White space is the space between major elements of the layout, and it can be also used for functionality. Visually, it establishes the hierarchy of the elements and make clear which elements belong together and which are separated.
Got it. So just to make it easier for our viewers, the microspace contains page margins, space between paragraphs, white columns, and space around the graphics, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So let's start with the margins. What are the right margins to use? Why to use them at all? And what's the right size of the margins we should use?
Historically, margins were places where the readers could write their notes, but nowadays they provide a place for the thumbs to hold the publication without covering the content.
Okay.
It's the white space that frames the page, separates the content from the edge of the paper, and they define the live area, which is the space where most of our content should stay within. Margins are not always symmetrical. Well, usually the bottom margin is bigger because it is used to place additional information useful for reader navigation.
Okay.
There, the designer usually place the folio and page numbers, but they can also accommodate other type elements like drop caps, short caption, and in some cases, pictures. If the space is used sparingly, it can disrupt the boxy layout look.
Okay, so you talk a lot about margins and just having them so people can like hold the magazine and not cover the text, but how to like deal with margins and ads and other visual elements, because in this example, as we see on the screen, there is an image in the page and it ignores the margin. It doesn't have white border around it. It goes on top of it, right?
Exactly. Some images can be extended over the edge of the page. And I think the best images to use for this technique is an image that is really quite simple, because the reader will be able to recompose the image in his mind. Okay. So this technique will help us to break up the boxy aspect of the layout.
Understand. And for example, if you have an image that goes across 2 pages and you have the margin in the middle, right?
Yeah.
To separate those pages, how should we deal with those situations?
Well, a page that is across the whole spread visually acts like a bridge. It connects the both pages. Yeah, of course, you have to be careful not to have important information from the picture to be caught in the spine, because otherwise they will not be quite visible when the reader browses the publication.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. Yeah, because this is like some designers, I saw some designers falling into this trap because they put, for example, somebody's face in the center, and when they print the magazine, it doesn't look that good, right?
Yeah, it might be the case. It is very subjective, this, because in some cases, if the person face is big enough, you can place it there because you're not going to lose so much information, and the reader will be able to recompose his face, his visage.
Okay, I got it. Okay, so let's get back to our elements into the macro spacing. And what about the white columns?
Well, white column is a column that the designer intentionally is leaving it empty. So when you have a grid layout that accommodates an even number of column, one of that column can be left empty. It can be used as a place where you can place pictures and captions and small other informations. For example, I don't know.
Quotes, like pull quotes, right?
Yeah, you can use for the pull quotes as well.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And what about the space around graphics? How should we like deal with those? Are there any like standard rules or best practices? What margin should be left around that?
Basically, the text wraps is the same size as the leading value or the increment of the baseline grid. So if you use the leading of 12 points, and of course it will be synchronized with the leading with the baseline grid, which increment every 12 points. Basically, the text wraps, the inset, it will have the same value. It will be 12 points. Why? Because when you place an image inside some columns, you want to make that image exactly the same, the distance between one baseline to another one. So in this case, you'll not have inconsistent space around it. It will be pretty much difficult to achieve the same result when the picture will have another shape, like for example, an ellipsis, because the space above and below, visually it will not be the same like the space in the center of the circle. So you have to tweak it manually to make it look the same.
Oh, yeah, I got it. Okay, so I guess that's it about the macro spacing, right? Or we missed something?
No, this is pretty much everything that we have to deal when we talk about microspacing.
Wow, we have so much like great information when it comes to white space. And I think that white space kind of became the topic of its own because you brought us so many like good insights and tips on how to use it and how to make your magazine layouts look more professional from now on. And I really wanted to cover 3 most common mistakes, but I feel like we have to split it in 3 videos.
This was the plan, but we we got stuck into the white space when you see that white space has such a great importance for the mastering the white space, and you'll master everything. This is my belief.